Breaking. A nurse checks the time at a bus stop in Kensington. 3 seconds later, her phone is gone. The attacker? Already 2 blocks away on an e-bike. Device wrapped in foil. GPS dead. Welcome to London 2025, where organised crime has turned your daily commute into a hunting ground. The numbers released this week aren't just statistics. They're a blueprint of a city under siege. 80,000 phones stolen in 12 months. That's 219 phones every single day. One every 6.5 minutes. But here's what the headlines won't tell you. This isn't random street crime. It's a global smuggling operation running in plain sight, and it's about to get much worse. If you want the full picture of what's really happening in our cities, hit subscribe now. This is the kind of reporting the algorithms try to bury. Let me show you how the machine works. It's 8:47 p.m. on Oxford Street. A teenager stops to text her mum she's running late. A moped appears from nowhere. Hand reaches out. Phone vanished. 15 seconds total. She doesn't even see his face. But that's just the surface. Within 2 minutes, that phone is in a Faraday bag. GPS signal killed. By 9:15, it's with a courier heading to a warehouse near Heathrow. By midnight, it's packed in a shipment container with hundreds of others. Destination? Shenzhen, China. In one single raid last December, authorities found nearly 1,000 stolen iPhones ready for export. Street value in London? Maybe £300 each. Resale value in Hong Kong? Up to £5,000 per device. This is not opportunistic theft. This is industrial-scale, organised crime with profit margins that would make a hedge fund jealous. And the gangs know exactly what they're doing. The Metropolitan Police confirmed that up to 40% of phone thefts in the capital are now linked to international smuggling networks. These aren't solo pickpockets. These are coordinated units operating with supply chains, logistics, and infrastructure. Some offenders are stealing a phone every 3 minutes during peak hours. One suspect in central London was later connected to 21 robberies in a single hour. Think about that speed. Think about that level of organisation. Now think about this. Shoplifting has surged by 54% in 1 year. Mobile phone theft is up 25%. Theft from the person has jumped 41%. Over 97,000 incidents recorded. The official advice from authorities? Physically tether your phone to your body. That's not a safety tip. That's a surrender notice. But let's talk about what this really means for ordinary people. Because behind every statistic is a human being whose life just got harder. The student who now walks 3 extra blocks to avoid certain streets. The commuter who keeps her phone hidden in her jacket, even when she needs to check the time. The shop owner who closed early for the 3rd time this week because groups of youths were circling outside. This is the invisible tax of living in a city where the social contract is breaking down. You pay for safety through taxes, but safety is no longer guaranteed. Instead, you pay again through fear, through vigilance, through the constant mental calculation of risk every time you step outside. And here's where it gets darker. Moped-enabled crimes have exploded. 23,000 incidents in 1 year. Riders armed with knives and hammers, swarming busy intersections, ripping phones from hands, threatening anyone who resists. Witnesses describe scenes that sound like action movies, except the victims are real and the trauma lasts long after the attacker is gone. In some boroughs, emergency response times are slowing because police are stretched across multiple, simultaneous incidents. Officers are making impossible choices about which calls to prioritise and which victims will have to wait. The system isn't just under pressure, it's buckling. Now let's project this forward, because that's where the real danger lives. If these trends continue for the next 5 years, we're not just looking at more theft. We're looking at the Brazilification of British cities. A 2-tier society where the wealthy live behind private security and gated communities, while public space becomes a free-for-all. Imagine a London where wearing a visible watch is considered reckless, where taking your phone out at a bus stop is seen as naive, where the basic freedoms we associate with a modern democracy, the freedom to move, to communicate, to exist in public space without fear, become luxuries available only to those who can afford private protection. That's not fear-mongering, that's pattern recognition. Because we've seen this movie before in cities around the world, and it always starts the same way. Small crimes ignored, enforcement weakened, criminal networks emboldened, public trust eroded, and then the tipping point where normal people just adapt to a worse reality. But there's something even more insidious happening beneath the crime statistics. This is a crisis of governance. When the state tells you to hide your belongings, instead of promising to catch the criminals, they're admitting they've lost control. They're transferring the burden of public safety from the government to the individual. That's not policy, That's abandonment. And the economic consequences are already visible. London's brand as a global destination is built on the idea that it's a safe, vibrant, world-class city. But who sends their child to study in a city where "don't walk alone after dark" is standard freshman orientation advice? Who invests in retail on a high street where customers are too afraid to stop and browse? Who visits a tourist landmark when every photo opportunity comes with the risk of a knife at your throat? The closed storefronts you see on Oxford Street aren't just victims of online shopping, they're casualties of an environment where fear has replaced footfall. International students are reconsidering their choices. Tourists are shortening their stays. Businesses that depend on walk-in customers are shutting down permanently. This is a death spiral, and it's accelerating. But let's be clear about something. This report isn't about spreading panic. It's about asking the questions that need answers. How did organised criminal gangs gain this much operational freedom in a G7 capital? Why are enforcement resources so stretched that response times are collapsing? And why is the official response focused on advice to victims instead of action against perpetrators? Because here's what we know. The gangs are organised, the supply chains are efficient, the profits are massive, and the risks for offenders are currently low enough that the business model works. Until that equation changes, the thefts will continue, the fear will deepen, and the city will keep hardening into something unrecognisable. So now I'm asking you directly, do you feel safer in your city than you did 3 years ago? Have you changed how you move through public space? Do you check over your shoulder more often? Do you hide your phone even when you need it? Drop your answer in the comments. Type your city name and either safer or less safe. Let's build a real map of what's happening across the country, because the mainstream outlets aren't asking these questions. They're too busy reprinting government press releases about falling murder rates, while ignoring the explosion in theft, robbery, and intimidation that destroys quality of life. This isn't just London's crisis. This is a warning signal for every major city in the West. When you stop enforcing laws against so-called small crimes, you don't get harmless disorder. You get organised criminal enterprises that fill the vacuum. The broken windows theory isn't theoretical anymore. It's the reality outside your front door. Behind every number in this report is a person. A nurse finishing a night shift. A student walking home. A parent warning their teenager to keep their phone hidden. These aren't abstractions. They're your neighbours. They're you. And the question we all have to answer is this. How much further does this go before we demand something changes? Not just better advice, not just more awareness campaigns. Actual enforcement, actual consequences, actual safety, because the criminals are watching too. And every successful theft that goes unpunished sends a signal to the next offender waiting in the shadows. The message is simple. The streets are open for business. The authorities may have stepped back. The politicians may be silent, but you're not. Your voice, your vote, your refusal to accept this as normal, that's what changes the equation. So share this video, tag someone who needs to see it, and tell me in the comments, what would you do if you were in charge? Because the conversation starts here, and it doesn't end until something actually changes. Stay vigilant, stay vocal, and don't let them convince you this is just how things are now.